okay? Take a moment, get that one down, and then we're going to get to the real fun stuff. In this example, we're going to do the same thing. Multiply top times top and bottom times bottom. But I don't want you to start foiling this, because the difference between here and here is these were all monomials. So we just use our exponent rules. But these are polynomials, right? Binomial, 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 trinomial, okay? If we're going to multiply those together, we have to FOIL. I do not want to FOIL all that. That's a lot of foiling, especially when I know that I'm eventually going to have to factor, because that's what they made me do in the first part of the notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply top and top and bottom times bottom after I factor everything, okay? So let's factor 20x minus 5x squared. If we look at 20x minus 5x squared, that is a greatest common factor situation. So what's my greatest common factor between 20x and negative 5x squared? Well, let's look at it. It should be 5x. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it negative 5x. Now, why would I do that? Because I want to rewrite that as negative 5x squared plus 20x. Why did I do that? Because I don't want the x squared term to come second. Because as you can see in all my other examples, and every other example we normally do, the x squared term comes first. And when it doesn't come first, it causes problems. And because I know that, I'm going to go ahead and make that flip early. So you might want to add that off to the side. Put x squared first. It's a guideline. It's not a hard, fast law or anything, but it sure is helpful. So flip these around. Now I do that. Okay, negative 5x squared. The greatest common factor here is going to be negative 5x. All right, take the negative 5 out with it because it's up front. It would just look funny if I left it. And that leaves me with x plus 4. Okay, or actually, excuse me, it's going to be x minus 4 because I'm taking out a negative sign, so the negative and the negative would make a positive. Okay, excuse me, negative, negative, positive. All right, trust me on this one, and I'll explain how if you miss that negative sign, it's not going to kill you, but it does help you later on. So there's this one factored, and now we got to factor this guy. So x squared, 3x minus 4, that's a quadratic. Let's go back to C quad 4, program, and my coefficients are 1, 3, and negative 4. And so that leaves me with x minus 1 and x plus 4. All right, so far so good. Now, that's our top multiplied together. And understand what we just did there, right? We factored here, and now we've multiplied it all together. We've kind of done 2 steps in one, because this is the left side factored, and this is the right side factored, all right? Now on the bottom, I'm going to do the same thing. Factor this guy first, and that's greatest common factor of x. Leave me with x minus 1. And then over here, greatest common factor, none. But we have a difference of squares, x squared, 4 squared. So we can write that x minus 4, x plus 4. Okay, now it's time to start simplifying. How do we do the simplifying? We cross out all the ones that are in common. So start over here. Do we have anything to simplify with negative 5? No, we don't. So we leave it. X divided by x. These are actually still 2 factors, right? So x and x, what happens to them? They cancel out. What about x minus 4? Oh, we have an x minus 4 down here. They cancel out. X minus 1, x minus 1. They cancel out. X plus 4, they cancel out. Son of a gun, you mean to tell me all that equals negative 5? Yes. And that, my friends, is why they call it simplifying. Okay? So, all of this, now officially the world's most complicated way to ever write the number negative 5. But that's what we're here for, ladies and gentlemen. We're simplifying. And yes, we do have to do all this stuff to make it happen. But again, you can do it. All right? Take a moment, pause, do what you got to do. Make sure you understand mostly what I did. Factor, factor, multiply, factor, factor, multiply, cancel out and simplify. That's what we're doing. let's try the back. Back is the same thing, except now we're dividing. But those of you who know me know that I love the fact that multiplication and division are really the same thing. Division is just multiplying by a number's reciprocal. So we're going to use that. Instead of saying this crazy fraction divided by x squared plus 3x minus 70 over x squared minus 100, I'm going to say that it's x squared minus 4x minus 21 over 5x plus 15 times the reciprocal of this. So the bottom goes up top, and the top goes down to the bottom. Okay? That's what we're dealing with. And now it's the same thing we did in the front. Okay? That's the only thing that's changed. Only thing I had to do was multiply by the reciprocal. Now it's just another example. So factor, factor, multiply, factor, factor, multiply. Quadratic, C quad 4. Coefficients are 1, negative 4, negative 21, enter, enter, x minus 7, x plus 3, right? There's my first one. Okay. And then I have to factor here, x squared minus 100. X squared is a perfect square. 100 is a perfect square. So I can use difference of squares. X minus 10, x plus 10. Okay? And I know I'm going through the factoring fast, but this has already been an 18-minute long video, and I'm sure you guys are sick of listening to me, so I got to kind of cruise. Again, pause if you need to, ask your friends for help on the factoring. There's my factor, factor, multiply up top. Now I got to factor, factor, multiply on the bottom. So 5x plus 15 simplifies, factors x plus 3, okay? Greatest common factor of 5, simple enough. Over here, x squared, 3x, negative 70. It's another quadratic. 1, 3, negative 70. Don't care. X minus 7, x plus 10. Okay. Factor, factor, multiply. Factor, factor, multiply. Last step is to cancel all the ones they have in common. Boom, boom. There's an x minus 7 top and bottom. Boom, boom. X plus 3 top and bottom. And boom, boom. X plus 10 top and bottom. So what am I left with? X minus 10 over 5. Again, all that just to say that. All right? Hopefully it's starting to click. We'll do one more, and then we'll look down here at this one on the bottom. We'll probably go ahead and do that one too. Here we have the same thing, except now instead of it being written with a division sign, it's written with an even bigger fraction. It's a fraction of fractions. One of the ugliest things that exist in math. Okay? So let's rewrite that as multiplying by the reciprocal. We're going to take this top fraction, x squared minus x minus 2 over x squared plus 4x minus 5, and multiply it by the reciprocal of the bottom fraction, x minus 2, 5x plus 25, that comes up top now, over x minus 2, okay? I'll scribble that out real good so we don't get confused, okay? Bottom went up top, top went down to the bottom, okay? Now, factor, factor, multiply, factor, factor, multiply. Again, once we do that reciprocal flip, it's the same thing we have been doing. So, C quad 4 here, 1, negative 1, negative 2, enter, enter, x minus 2, x plus 1. Greatest common factor over here, times 5 times x plus 5. Okay, backed out to 5 there. We'll move that somewhere that makes more sense later, I promise. Here, quadratic, 1, 4, there we go, negative 5, 1, negative 5, x minus 1, x plus 5. Hey, x minus 2 is already a linear factor. How cool is that? We don't have to do anything with that one. God, that feels good. And then now we cancel out. X minus 2 on top and bottom, x plus 5 on top and bottom, x plus 1, x minus 1, can't do anything with those. So, let's move up. 5 will come up front because that just makes more sense. X plus 1, x minus 1. All right? There you have it. Okay? All right. Last bit. I promise we're almost done. We will have undefined values, okay? And we will talk about this a little bit more once we look at some of the homework, but we always have to be careful with these, especially once we start dealing with them as functions, about where the where the denominator equals 0. You can't divide by 0. You guys know that. We can't divide by 0, which means we can't have any x values down here that are going to make any of this equal 0. So, how do we figure out where that's going to happen? You set the denominator equal to 0 and then solve. So, for these problems, or at least once we get to the point where we're looking at where the undefined values are, if that's all they're asking for, I don't really care about what's up top. We don't have to do anything with it. I only need to look at 2x times 3x squared minus 4x minus 4 equals 0. And now, how am I going to figure out where this equals 0? Well, I could graph it, see where it crosses the x-axis, or I could factor. You know me, I'm going to factor. 2x, pull out c quad again, 3, negative 4, negative 4. Comes out to x minus 2, and then this is negative 2/3, okay? You just need to know that. So that means I'm going to have 3x plus 2, okay? So x minus 2, there's my first factor. 3x plus 2 is my third. 2x is a factor, x minus 2 is a factor, 3x plus 2 is a factor. Oops, again, get that all from here. And then I set each of these equal to 0 because that's our zero product property. If any of these equal 0, they all equal 0, or the whole thing equals 0. So 2x equals 0, x equals 0. Okay, can't plug 0 in down here to this original. X minus 2 equals 0, so x equals 2. Can't plug 2 in down here, or you'll get 0. And finally, 3x plus 2 equals 0. That'll come out to x equals, negative 2/3. Okay? So I can't plug in 2, negative 2/3, or 0 into this equation because if I do, it'll make this whole thing undefined because I would be dividing by 0. Now, those of you who are especially sharp are thinking, wait a minute, why did he do all that factoring? Isn't it all right here? And the answer is, yeah, it sure is, right? This is a solution, so I don't need the factor to tell me what the solution is because the solution is where it's going to equal 0. Come on, Mr. Young, you're slipping. Again, very late, very late. But I set the first factor equal to 0. That tells me here, you see quad 4 the other ones. You can avoid this step after you get a little more comfortable with it, but here's why it all works. All right, guys, we just covered 5 sections, approximately, 6, 7 examples. What are we doing? It all comes back down really to this, okay? Multiply top and bottom and simplify, okay? The multiplication is going to be rough. This simplifying involves a lot of factoring, but that's what we're doing. You multiply the top and the bottom, you factor, you simplify. Or you factor, then you multiply, then you simplify. It's all the same thing. You guys can do this. All right, put your best foot into it. You got the rest of the hour to work. I know it's been a lot of me talking. I'm going to wrap it up, but put your best foot forward, write down your questions, and I'll be back tomorrow, God willing, to polish this up and then move us on to the real fun stuff in the next chapter, because trust me, 8-2 sucks. All right, I love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Much love.